Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Goingsnake. I am Jaja Lynx, and as you may have surmised by the title of this video flashing across the screen there, we are going to be building a brewery today. This is my second attempt at recording this. Right as I started last time, a bunch of dudes showed up right outside of my apartment with weed whackers and pretty much ruined that attempt, but I think that they're packing up. It looks like they're packing up, so hopefully they don't start things back up again here. But yeah, we're gonna go for it, and hopefully there are no weed whackers in the background. Anyway, so before I start talking about this build, really quick, one thing I did want to mention, because I keep trying to squeeze this in at the end of the video, but then I lose track of where I am in the video and I run out of time and I don't really get to squeeze it in. But if you are just stumbling upon this video, which that's pretty much, I'm thinking it's the only way you're really going to be finding it, because I have 9 subscribers and I'm pretty sure they're all my accounts from various other endeavors. Please be sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this city so far, and if you find this build interesting. Definitely would love to kind of build a community around this, and I would love to hear any thoughts that anyone might have about future ideas for this city, things that you'd like to see me build, and any thoughts you might have on the city as a whole. So yeah, definitely subscribe. I'd love to build a community around this and hear your thoughts. Anyway, so yeah, that's the me shamelessly plugging and begging for subscribers portion of the video, and let's go ahead and get into the build. So as you can see, this is really kind of based around warehouses. My inspiration for this build is really Sierra Nevada, their location in Asheville. Not so much aesthetically, because that one is definitely a little bit more, I don't know what the right word is exactly, but this is kind of a grungy one, which is sort of the look that I was wanting to go with, and that one is definitely really brand new and it's less warehousey. But I do feel like most of the breweries that you see popping up all over, at least in the US, are just old abandoned warehouses that have been reclaimed because they're cheap and you can get a ton of space, and you throw all of your brewing equipment in there, you throw a tap room in, and you've got yourself a brewery. So that's kind of the aesthetic I was going for, but the reason that I built this was, or at least the inspiration behind it, was really Sierra Nevada, but I kind of borrowed the aesthetics from other places. And all in all, I was super happy with the way that this build came out. I did the procedural objects again to kind of create some signage. I looked around the workshop for some brewery signage or something that I could use as signage for a brewery, and I couldn't really find anything that I felt like fit what I was wanting to go for. So instead I opted to just kind of plop it on a wall here. I wanted to make it a little bit higher up and make it fill out more of the wall, but just the way the texture fit onto the wall, I couldn't really make it work out. So that's kind of what I had to work with. But all in all, I'm really happy with the way that ended up coming out. I think that having the flowers and bushes and stuff under it kind of make the text being so low make a little bit more sense. So I ended up not minding it too much. And one thing I was trying to make sure I did was use assets that were going to bring people in to this, because it ultimately is just kind of a bunch of warehouses and there's not a whole lot there. And then with the procedural object being one of the buildings. That's not going to bring in any traffic. So that porch that I put there is a commercial space. I think it's technically a juice bar. But so some people go there. I did throw a police station inside of the warehouse too, just to kind of get the police station employees coming in, and there's cop cars that kind of patrol the parking lots a little bit. And so eventually I did get enough stuff in here to kind of get some foot traffic. And then I eventually put an elementary school in there too, just to get more people walking to and from it. We won't pay attention to the fact that they're all children walking to the brewery, but there's at least some people walking to the brewery. So not all that's happened quite yet, but we did start to get to the point where there was a little bit of foot traffic. There's a little bit of cars parked in the parking lot, and all in all, it started to get a little bit of life, which was something that I really wanted to have happen. It's such a big brewery. It was going to be pretty disappointing if it was just sitting there and no one was going to it. It would be going back to being just a dilapidated old warehouse pretty quick if it had no customers. Speaking of which, this main asset I used really is still kind of a dilapidated old warehouse. You can see there, if you get too close, there's just broken fences and stuff right at what I'm kind of picturing as the main entrance to the brewery. But I covered those up as best as I could. Really, the only spot that's super noticeable, I feel like, is that one little piece hanging over the stairs. But all in all, I mean, you don't really see that unless you're zoomed right in at that angle, which doesn't happen too often, so no big deal. I was not too terribly concerned about that, really. So yeah, at this point, we've pretty much got the base building put down, and now it was really just a matter of going in and sprucing it up a little bit. I did a lot of landscaping, and this was probably the happiest I've been with any of the landscaping I've done, really. The landscaping that I did for this episode. I really like the landscaping in front of the little Goingsnake signage on the wall there. I think that came out cool. And then there's some other stuff that I do later. We'll talk about that more in a bit. But all in all, I was super happy with it. And then around the back here, I decided to do kind of a loading dock. You had those two big doors in the back of this one warehouse, and I figure with this being a pretty big brewery, they're going to have some shipping going on of sending their product out to different bars and grocery stores and stuff like that. So that's what I'm building back here. It's not perfect because it's definitely a pretty tight space that I tried to cram this into, and I don't know if it ultimately makes a ton of sense in terms of maneuverability for trucks, but let's just say they're using shorter box trucks or something like that, not big 18-wheelers. And maybe it makes a little bit more sense that way, but I think this came out pretty cool. So I just did some lines here. I figured this is just like a don't park anything here to make sure that the trucks have unhindered access to the loading docks. I threw some barrels and crates and stuff out here just to give it some extra props and a little detail. There's not really a story behind that or anything. I don't know what they're using those for, but they just have some stuff stored out there. And then this was pretty cool. I was pretty happy with the way that this came out. I just built like a little loading platform for the trucks to pull up to, for the employees to kind of jump up there and be able to reach the trucks a little bit better and get everything all loaded up. So that's just ploppable asphalt that I used there, and then I used this network concrete wall to kind of seal it off and give it some form. And then one issue that I did have with this that I wasn't expecting, I didn't know this was a thing that happened, but I guess it is, was the decals like went through the ploppable asphalt even though they were way underneath it, so I had to rearrange things a little bit there to alleviate that issue, but it ended up working out, so that wasn't too big of a deal. And yeah, so that was more or less that for that build. And then I had this space back here because it was kind of an awkward angle with that procedural warehouse that I put in there. So I just kind of filled it in with a dumpster, and put a little gate in front of the dumpster. I thought that made sense. Somewhere along the lines, I screwed up my landscaping up front there, but just lowered that back down and we were all set. And of course, we've got our parking lot, which you already saw me kind of working on. I didn't quite finish the parking spaces previously because I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do with roads going around the sides. But at this point, I finally feel like I had more or less finalized my parking lot and road layouts around the brewery. So I went ahead and finished up our parking spaces. And then I ended up going through and kind of redoing these parking spaces a little bit to throw in some handicap signs, handicap parking spots, that is. And then I just did a little bit more landscaping up front here. And of course, you know how I feel about the fall trees and the fall leaves. Those are of utmost importance, so made sure to throw a bunch of those everywhere. But yeah, so I just finished up this little bit of landscaping here. This was pretty cool. I like the way that this came out. It's a little bit funny because that warehouse that's in front of, people do work there and go there, so they end up just trudging through, and there's one right there, trudging through this landscaping to get to and from work. So that's not exactly optimal, but not much you can do about that. It's mostly just funny, I guess. And here, this part I'm not totally sold on. I don't love the way that the texture looks for these hills, and I don't think it makes a ton of sense the way it is just a big hill right there. So I did some landscaping here and just threw some flowers and trees down and some bushes. But I don't know, it's not my favorite part of this build. That might be something I go through and spruce up a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll just forget about it and be okay with it. But I don't know. I think that could have been a little bit better. And so yeah, now we're moving around to the back side of it. And this is definitely a part where I kind of was inspired by the Sierra Nevada Brewing location in Asheville. They have this really cool patio balcony thing at the backside of the brewery that kind of overlooks this giant garden area. I didn't quite have room for the giant garden area, but I did have this nice river right behind it, so I figured that can kind of be the substitute. So yeah, I built just a big patio out back for people to go and sip on their beers and enjoy the view. And I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. I think it's a really, really cool look. I think it fits in well with the aesthetic of this warehouse. And yeah, it was pretty simple to build too. It was surprisingly easy. So it was a nice way to detail the back end of this thing a little bit more. These network walls are so cool. It took me a little bit to kind of figure out how to maneuver them, because they're super unruly if you try to just put them where you want them. And that's what I was trying to do at first, and I quickly realized that that's not really the way to do it. But now that I've got them kind of figured out, and do the just throw them down with the number of nodes that I want them to have and then move the nodes method, we're good. Everything's great. And then I did a little bit more landscaping out back here just to kind of make that transition of the wall to the ground a little bit smoother. And I like the way that it came out with the kind of curvature of the mulch and not just being a straight line. I think that that's kind of cool. I did end up playing with some of those trees a little bit. I was thinking that, we've got this nice viewing area that I built, and I want people to be able to see the river, but then I built all these tall trees obscuring the view of the river. And I ultimately decided I wasn't super crazy about that, so I moved some of those trees and replaced them with smaller ones. I didn't get rid of all of them because I do think the taller trees look really nice, but I did make some gaps in the trees so people could still see the river. Then I just used some different decals there to give the patio a different texture. I wanted to do like a tile, but I didn't have any tiles that were big enough to... When I used the smaller ones, they just clipped through the ploppable asphalt, and it didn't work, so I had to use a bigger one, and this brick one was really all I had, so that's what we went with. And I mean, it makes sense. It's a lot of brick, but I guess it does make sense because we've got brick warehouses. Maybe this was just part of another warehouse at some point, and now it's a patio. I don't know. Maybe it's reclaimed bricks that we used for the patio. Let's go with that. Yeah, here's me just trying to make a little bit more viewing room. Moved a couple trees, threw some benches down, figure people could just sit there along the wall, gazing into the picturesque Appalachian wilderness. Because it's definitely a mountain on the other side of the river. And then just a little bit of light landscaping there. I didn't do anything too crazy. I couldn't decide really what I wanted to do in the back there, so I just threw a couple bushes down and pretty much called it a day. And this is more of that landscaping that I'm not 100% sure about. I mean, it gets the job done. It covers that wall a little bit. I don't know. It's just tough with the textures for the steeper slopes. I'm not 100% sure how to handle that, but all in all, I think it's good enough. Maybe I'll change it, maybe I won't. We'll see. And I think we're starting to wind down now. I did a little bit more placing these leaves. Oh, this was something cool. I actually am pretty happy with the way that this came out. One thing that, really the only thing that I don't like about these parking lot roads is just how abruptly they end. You really have to kind of do something to cover the end of those roads, whether it's having it run into a building or placing some curb there or whatever. I decided to do kind of like a garden at the end there, and I think that came out pretty cool. I was super happy with the way that looked. That was another nice, just quick and dirty cover up type situation. I don't know. I was pretty happy with it. Yeah, all in all, this was a fun build, and I'm super happy with the way it came out. And this part, actually, we may have saved the best for last. I'm really happy about the way that this came out. So this is just going to be a sign, just another sign along the road for Goingsnake Brewing. And I went into the workshop looking for some sort of just blank sign that I could use the procedural objects to put text on. I couldn't find anything really, but I did find they're construction assets actually meant for building homes under construction. So they're just a bunch of pieces of wood, and one of them was like perfect sign size. So I ended up just using that and throwing some text on it with procedural objects. And then these bricks were like doorway assets and stuff that I found, and various brick walls. So I used those to kind of give the sign a little bit more structure. And I think I ended up bailing on this doorway thing actually, because I couldn't, for some reason, it wouldn't let me sink it into the ground, and it didn't work as a procedural object, so I couldn't do it that way either. So that was kind of odd. But yeah, so it ended up, I mean, that's pretty much it for the sign. It was a pretty simple little build, but I think it looks really cool. And then I really like the landscaping around it, and I think it all turned out really nice. Threw some planters in at the bottom, got rid of all the ruined grass around it to make it look a little bit cleaner. And yeah, I think it's really cool. I feel like maybe my landscaping is getting a little bit better. I don't know. Might be a little too soon to make that claim, but just based on that alone, I would say maybe it is. But then I look over here at some of this stuff against this slope, and I'm like, maybe it still sucks. But yeah, so that's this build. Here is a time lapse. I kind of messed up the location for it because I wasn't exactly sure what the orientation was going to be of this brewery. But yeah, there's our time lapse, before and after, whatever. Don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, let me know what you think, and here are our cinematics.